Ian, your thoughts on Etoje, the captain?
I like it. I think, Chris portrayed his character there, that he's a really humble guy off the field, but that's certainly not what you see on it. And, I'd have him in the same category of like the likes of Martin Johnson, Delalio, these guys who've got massive presence about them. I know we've spoken at length about, how Sarries or England are cheering when they win a penalty or a team knocks the ball on, and that frustrates a lot of supporters. But this is a guy who leads from the front and who I would associate with an England captain. Leadership isn't necessarily what you're saying in team huddles or what you're saying in the media. It has become a big part of it, and it is a taxing part of it for them. But the best way to lead is with your actions. And this is a guy who, as Chris said, is going to be playing 80 minutes every week, leading from the front. And that should be a big motivator for his team.
Yeah, it's interesting about the undiagnosed illness going on for about 18 months and then a period of time to be treated afterwards. Because it did look a couple of years ago, there was a couple of years where he was just single-handedly ruining Irish days. And it was a phenomenon, and then just went off the boil a touch. You never quite know what's going on with someone. So he could be poised for a real return to form. And the talk over there is actually, because we're all looking at it through our Irish prism, it's Etoje as Lions captain. And that's a subplot to Saturday. It's Caelan Doris, Ireland's prospective Lions captain, against Etoje, the English Lions captain, potentially, is another aspect. So you'd be surprised somehow if Etoje doesn't have a big game on Saturday.
Yeah, and the line out is a crucial part of this game as well. And I saw some reports this morning that maybe the Curry brothers are going to start alongside Ben Earl. I'd be slightly surprised if they did go with that, because having the likes of Chesum there at 6, who's a good line out operator, backing up Martins and Etoje when, both winning your own ball, but as we saw in autumn, contesting the Irish ball. Teams got good return from that, and everyone now knows in international rugby that the foundation of the Irish attack is quite often the line out set piece. And look, Borthwick was one of the best technical line out operators, and England will have a good attacking and defensive line out at the weekend, and that will be led by Etoje playing mind games and shouting and hollering and putting Kelleher or Sheehan under pressure, and the Ireland caller under pressure. Sarries have done a job on the Leinster defensive line out before, as of England, and they'll take a lot of confidence in what they did in Twickenham last year.
You send a message. You reckon 3 areas they'll really go after. We've alluded to them, give or take. So line out was one. That aerial ability, Tommy Freeman, Munster at Northampton, that demonstrated how good he was in the air. I think he won borderline every 50-50 he went up for in one wing. You've Freddie Stewart and you've Tom Roebuck, who's going to get the nod. So they are all big men. So line out, fight in the air, and then the scrum as well. That sense of yours heightened by Furlong's omission.
Yeah, Furlong's a big loss. He's genuine world class, and a front row most likely of Genge, Cowan, Dickey, and Stewart. Good experience they have. They're a front row that wouldn't be afraid of attacking the opponent's scrum. They're not just going to be looking to lock out their own ball. And if you can get a few penalties there, as we've seen, you can flip the field, give yourself opportunities. They would be the 3 main areas that I think they'll go after them. The Curry one is an interesting one, because that would indicate that they're going to go after Ireland on the ground. And I know we've spoken on the pod, 2 areas. First off, contesting in the air. It's never been easier to contest when your own team is kicking because of the escorting rule change. That rule change is more prevalent in international rugby because the quality of the box kicking and the kicking from out half is of a higher standard, which creates a better contest in the air.
It's funny you say that, because of all the times I've really noticed this rule change, it was almost its first outing England, New Zealand.
Yeah. And look, it's no slide on club scrum halves or club out halves. It's just the cream rises to the top. The likes of Mitchell, he's probably the best box kicker in the Premiership, or very close to it.
No coincidence he was kicking to Freeman for Northampton.
Correct. right? And teams now have also had like 3 months of practicing getting up and slapping the ball back. And that's actually a rule that I would like to see brought in, that you have to get up and catch the ball. You're not allowed to get up and just slap it back. I think that's I think it's become too favorable to be the kicking team, and to the team that's receiving the kick have to not only get out of the way, but it's very hard to get yourself in a positive position to win the scraps if the winger chasing the box kick just gets up and slaps it back.
And
Uh,
how do the Irish back three say? I mean, are we presuming it's going to be Keenan, Hansen, Lowe getting the nod? I mean, fitness obviously dependent. How are they in the air if that kind of challenge is coming
yeah,
at them?
I think it's be. I was very impressed with James Lowe at the weekend. He showed he was fit. He's good to go. I'd
Okay.
imagine he'll come in on the left. Hansen and Nash, like Nash was the one who was really hard done by from autumn to not get any opportunity. He's played really well for Munster. He offers a bit more physicality, and maybe against this England side, and he's very good early,
Yeah.
both at chasing box kicks and receiving them. Look, the key is that the team have to get back and prepare themselves to get on the scraps, and that isn't a luck thing. That is a work rate thing, and you've got to practice getting into good positions, and your reaction times have to be good. You also have to get back and cover that if your team knocks it on or knocks it back, that you've got people in position to get it. Like Joe would have always talked about the triangle, and he would have which is having two players covering in behind the person catching it. That again is work rate.
So it's not even a case of, well, we just play someone who can catch every ball. That's not realistic. There are going to be scraps, so it's how you adapt as a team.
Exactly. What position can you get into? And that's where like someone like Josh van der Fleer would have been practicing that. And there is drills that teams will do in training to practice that skill. It is a skill. It's no coincidence that the best guys come up with the ball more often than not.
Yeah. So say, I mean, and we won't really know till Saturday. Say England put the brakes a little bit on that rush defence and a little bit more drift. Not saying a drift defence back in the day, but a little bit less committed, and let Ireland go through phases and then really go after them at the on the ground. How will Ireland fare against that? Is that a type of defence that they enjoy? Because I've heard it said, I don't know to what extent you'd agree, but that almost causes Ireland the most trouble. That in a way, a blitz defence coming at them, they almost back themselves and their skill set to go through that or get around that. But actually, that more we're not overly committing defence and going to go after you at the ground. That's caused them a bit of trouble lately. I'm fascinated for your thoughts on it all.
Yeah, a big thing that I've seen from the Champions Cup, post the autumn internationals, when you kind of have a hunch on something and then it gets backed up and you see a good competitive game, two equal sides going at it. It has become very difficult to attack and to hold on to the ball. The breakdown is so competitive because you've got the tackler getting up, bouncing and either barging or contesting, and then you have another player coming in and barging or contesting. So you used to be able to sometimes ruck with only one guy or two guys. Now sometimes you're ending up sending three or four guys in. And not only is it just like stepping over the ball, this is like an all-out wrestling match now, is what it's come to. And like it's a foundation of Leinster's game. And I'd imagine it's going to come into Ireland's game when they're defending. As a result of that, like when you saw Exeter winning the Champions Cup and they could go 30, 40, 50, 60 phases, it wasn't that tiring. Whereas to do that now and to play edge to edge and to have all these breakdown contests and having to reload as an attacking team, if you don't score after giving it a go for 30 or 40 phases, you are in deep, deep trouble.
Right.
Because as we've seen, like the clear strategy of Bordeaux is to let teams attack, right? And then they contest really, really hard at the breakdown. And when they turn you over, it is devastating because they are then attacking against a team that is really tired.
Yes, that's really interesting. So does that mean the game has shifted slightly away from where Ireland were over the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years? Because I would think of Ireland during that period, lots of possession, controlling the game, Sexton pulling strings, phase after phase after phase. We're going to get you eventually. That was kind of our MO. I'm not saying that's all we were, but is that a slight shift away from what Ireland were really good at when they were in their pomp?
It's a big shift away, and that's okay. Where the Prendergast Crowley debate comes in. If you threw that wide ball was it on, or has that put us under big pressure because we don't have the players to then resource that breakdown? Or should you just cut your cloth and go back to short side, or cut your cloth and get the ball up in the air and go, right, we can get a breather into our team? And that's where what's really important now with international rugby, it's not just playing the phase you're in, it's planning for 2 and 3 phases ahead. If you get this picture, if the ball carrier isn't dominant, what do you then do next? Because it's changing so quickly that if you try and stick to the original plan and you don't make the gain line, the next phase you're getting turned over. It's just become quite easy to turn the ball over now.
Okay. God, that's a real rethink then. Do we like that change in the game?
I'm always going to wear like the attacking teams hat. Like I think the rules have gone too far at making it easy to turn the ball over at the breakdown. It's become really difficult to ruck with the neck roll, croc roll, not being able to have that additional roll on the ground. So they're in fairness to World Rugby, they're usually pretty good at coming in and balancing the books, and that's where like not being able to slap the ball back if you're the oncoming chaser from a box kick, like that's a positive change for the attacking team. But yeah, there's definitely a few tweaks that I would be keen on. Another one at the breakdown is if you're the first person in at the breakdown that you can only barge. Could we see that coming in? That and it would create more of a genuine contest over the ball, as opposed to the defending player going straight down on the ball and getting their hands on it. You've got a contest of winning the space over the ball. I don't think that will come in, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of back rows who'll be very anti that rule, but it has become really difficult to attack, and tied in with that, you're going to see more kicking and you're going to see more short side attack, because it's easier to win your own ball back when you're going on a short side attack than it is going to the long side.
So keeping the ball and protecting the ball is going to be massive now for teams in possession, so we'll look out for that. In terms of team selection, let's assume it's Lowe and Keenan, and it's Hansen or Nash. I mean, how you pick between Aki and Henshaw, I don't know exactly, but he'll pick one of them. And then the word from Portugal seems to be that Prendergast will continue, based on what the journalists out there saw of training, that Prendergast will get the nod. That comes with a slight health warning, but that seems to be the sense. One of the areas for slight debate is your back row. If you're assuming McCarthy and Ryan are now fairly nailed on second row, it's a case of who you're putting with Van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. So Tyg Byrne got the nod for November in the second test in South Africa. There's obviously been some sense of a bit more dynamism, and should a Ryan Baird come in? Discuss.
Yeah, that's the interesting one. Ryan Baird, like he's done well at times when he's had his opportunities, but he hasn't stayed fit enough to really put together 3, 4, 5 games back to back. Autumn somewhat passed him by. I think he played the first Champions Cup game, didn't play the second one there in the recent games. It's a balance, and I know we've spoken about this before, about like in Ireland, I feel like we're obsessed with who's starting. Like guys coming off the bench can have more of an impact on the game than the guys starting. And that's where like Jack Conan has become really good at it. And it is a skill. Can you come off the bench, fit in, make an impact, know when to go for a slightly less percentage play, or know what the team needs at a given time. And like Tyg is a really smart guy, and he could have, like, he gives Ireland multiple options, because he can come into the second row, he can come in at 6. So look, we've got a wealth of talent there. I don't feel particularly passionately about who should start and who shouldn't.
It doesn't swing it, or it's not decisive necessarily. I would think, to be fair, what you're talking about, it's going back a while now, but there was a period when O'Gara and Humphreys were really going at it, and it seemed like whichever of them came off the bench had a huge impact. It's not inconceivable we'll get that with our 210s at the moment.
No, and it's also like round one, like who's starting, Prendergast or Crowley. I think like same with like the big debate is like who's going to start at 12, who's going to start at 6. Like Bundy isn't going to start 5 in a row. Prendergast probably is not going to start 5 in a row if he does start the first game. Same with Tyg. There's going to be rotation there, and you're going to get your opportunities either off the bench or to start in other games.
Yeah. So, what else is front of your mind when you're watching Ireland on Saturday? What are you looking out for in particular?
Um, I think just the, the positives that I've seen that I want to see more of is more deception at the line and being able to create soft shoulders in the defense and keeping the ball alive. Like the teams that are doing it the best at the moment are the likes of Toulouse and Bordeaux because they've got great footwork, they've got great deception at the line, they win the initial contact or they create a soft shoulder, and then they're keeping the ball alive. And what that does to the defense is you just can't get set. You can't get set. You can't communicate with each other, and you can't get off the line and apply pressure in a structured way. It's unstructured. It's not something that you've really practiced in training. And I think Ireland need to get more comfortable with that in their attack.
Okay, that had slipped.
I think they got caught between the rules changing, playing their old system of kind of wide to wide, high phase count, and then trying to balance with resourcing the breakdown, which you now have to do, which does affect the shape that you have. You've got to have bodies closer to the ball carrier. But then the ultimately a breakdown is you've been tackled, you've lost. Can you keep the ball alive?
Hmm.
That's what I would love to see coming into the Irish game in the Six Nations.
Okay, interesting. If you're looking for kind of signs of a team ready to go again, Doris, when he was speaking in Rome, we touched on it with Rory on a recent episode, was pretty honest about November. The team hadn't really come out and said we weren't that happy with November because why would you do that in the midst of a November and give your opponents any encouragement? But the other week, Doris said, "Yeah, we just it wasn't us," and so they're not operating under the delusion that things were good, which was, I think, good to hear.
Yeah, and look, we've also seen with the Irish provinces, like when you look back on the initial, either the URC or the initial rounds of the Champions Cup, they weren't quite catching fire. And
Mm.
like we spoke about like the quality of Leinster's attack, and geez, it looked very exciting the last couple of rounds there, and as did Munster's. So yeah, it definitely feels like there's more momentum from the club players going into the internationals as opposed to, oh, I hope they find form.
Yes.
Or yeah, so it definitely caught us a bit cold. And you think back to why. Well, like usually you would have two Champions Cup games before the autumn internationals. This was the first year that we didn't, so you didn't have a kind of battle hardened ground to get yourself up to speed.
Yeah, we talked a lot about attack there. I suppose the final aspect really to get your thoughts on Ireland is around defence, and that's where Leinster's Nina Barr come into the equation. What impact, if any, do you think the Leinster way of defending now is going to have on this Six Nations?
I think, well, look, the majority of the players are coming from the Leinster team. That's just the reality. They're beginning to see the real value in that rush defense. Like they concede, Leinster concede the least amount of points in the league, and they score the most. And you very rarely see that. Usually, if you concede the least, you'll score slightly more.
Mm.
But to have and for me to win the likes of the Six Nations competition or to go on and win the World Cup, Ireland need to be able to employ the blitz defense to challenge the top teams, the likes of South Africa, New Zealand, France, by employing the system that Joe Schmidt had Australia using against us in autumn. I don't believe that we win a competition like the World Cup by doing that. We have to be on the line, pushing as hard as we can, catching teams behind the gain line. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the defensive system.
And so, how big a gulf is there between the way Ireland have been traditionally defending? Because I don't feel Ireland are like falling backwards and going, come on
Yeah,
to us and drifting kind of old school style. But there is, to your right, there is a significant difference between the way Ireland have been defending and the way Leinster are currently defending.
There was, we saw coming in more in autumn, the aggressive off the line out. So like just as the ball's being popped from the top of the line out, you've got players now sprinting up, and a good litmus test is always the midpoint of the line out. Are we winning that? If the line out was on the halfway line, you are seeing Leinster making the impact sometimes on the opposition 10-meter line. The impact is like 7, 8, 9 meters past where the gain line is. It's phenomenal. And Ireland will bring that in. I've no doubt.
You've no doubt, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's you probably undercut the next question, because I was going to say Ireland said, well, look, that's the Leinster way and that's the Nín Arbor way, and we're going to do our traditional way, and that's just that. That can raise all sorts of issues, because it was really striking reading Sexton's memories of 2019 in his recent book, whereby a problem for Joe Schmidt was Stuart Lancaster.
Yeah.
It just was. And Sexton very memorably details. And remember, by the way, at the start of 2019, Joe Schmidt and Ireland are at an all-time peak. They're the number one side in the world. They've just beaten New Zealand in Dublin. They're the Grand Slam champions. So the Joe Schmidt method is working. But Sexton remembers in Six Nations camp this kind of very week, one of the younger Leinster players who's become very used to life under Lancaster saying to Sexton, is there any chance of us playing any rugby in here? It's in the book. Any chance of playing any rugby? So that's that could be the tension which arises if, God, a lot of the Leinster guys are really enjoying Nín Arbor and seeing the fruits of it, but Ireland are holding steady. But you've maybe negated the worry there by saying you suspect Ireland will embrace that style of defending.
Yeah, and part of it is like a D coach, the way he implements the system is it accumulates week on week. So, for example, he's saying, look, Joe, in this instance, look, you made the tackle, but you could have pushed harder. You could have got higher up the field. You could have tackled them 3, 4, 5 meters back. Or, Ian, you were inside Joe. You needed to be up higher with him to release him to make the tackle further back. That all accumulates. You're making it clear and then you're also saying, look at Gary here. He gets up and he makes it, and that's impactful for us. And every player is looking at that going, that's what I've got to do to get in this team, right? Or I've got to not do what Joe was doing to get myself back into the team, or whatever it might be. And that accumulates over a day, a week, a month, 2 months, a season, as we've seen with Leinster. Okay, so now you've got Leinster employing this system, getting the results, and they know what good looks like. And they've been pushing the boat. To then go back to a system that now in your heart of hearts, is not as good as the one as you're employing. That is demoralizing.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you want to look at it from an English perspective, right, they're now trying to change their system, right? This wasn't working, or we didn't have the players, or we're not fit enough to be able to do that system. Whatever the excuse is, we're now bringing in this one. To be bringing in a new defensive system in 2 weeks is just simply not enough time. The only way you find out if your defense is working or it's not isn't from training. It is from playing matches, because full contact is so different to grab. And full contact in training is very different to full contact in a test match. So
yeah, no, it all adds up. The logical conclusion of what you're saying, by the way, is that Nín Arbor has done Irish rugby here a huge favour by bringing this into Leinster, working on it week in, week out, and therefore making it relatively easy for Ireland to inculcate it as well. So Jacques Nín Arbor has done our Irish rugby a big favour here on the defensive front in your eyes.
Massively so.
Funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all talk about him as a spy sent over here to take back any of our good stuff. But then again, maybe South Africa don't need any of our good stuff. They're doing just fine.
Yeah, maybe he'll be the coach for the next World Cup. Who knows?
Okay. Well, that's going to be very interesting to see. So you would think, no more so than it's happened with Leinster, as he's really got his feet under the table. You saw a few snippets of that in November. You wouldn't be shocked if Ireland start to even push it a bit more defensively, and we start even seeing more of that's a bit more of a Nín Arbor Leinster flavour. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and for Ireland to win, Ireland to beat the likes of France, and for Leinster to win the Champions Cup and beat the likes of Toulouse or Bordeaux or La Rochelle, they need to defend that way.
Okay. Interesting. Your prediction for Saturday?
Look, England did do a job on us last year. I was one of the few people who actually said everyone wrote them off before that game, and I said, tread carefully here. They'll have a plan, and their plan worked.
It was a simple plan. It was executed
very
well.
Very simple plan. Yeah, exactly. So look, I really like Ireland, and I like how we're playing. We've got good form going into it. I always think it's good to see, look, how did the Irish provinces get on against the English teams? And that used to be the best thing to look at when there was 12 English teams. There's only 8 now. And you've also got some of the top English teams littered with other good talent, the likes of Finn Russell, and not necessarily English guys. We've got a significant edge on the Premiership teams now. And part of that is the budget in the Premiership has been reduced. It's not as strong as it was. That does carry into the Six Nations. I think Ireland win, I think 10 points.
Okay. We're not going to go through every team. We don't have time, but Scotland and France we should touch on. So the Scots are Ireland's opponents in round 2. Sione Tuipulotu's injury is very significant, so they'll be co-captained by Finn Russell and Rory Darge, who did the job in the Six Nations last year. You like the look of them in many ways. Often, traditionally, what's questioned is their power. That's still a very fair question mark hanging over them.
Yeah, they don't have the power athletes in their pack, and that's why, like, you know, everyone's saying how big a loss Tuipulotu is, and that's why, because it's not like the guy coming in covering him is, you know, similar power, or they have a powerful forward pack. He covers up for the Scottish forwards not being powerful enough. Now, look, saying that, they're a very cohesive team. They're creative. They're settled. Glasgow have been performing well both in Europe and the URC. They obviously won the URC last year. Edinburgh have had a poor season, but some of their individuals in that team who've been playing for Scotland have been playing well.
Right.
They have a lovely, like, if you were to pick a schedule, I'd be like, yo, give me that Scottish one. You know, 2 home games. It's all about momentum into this competition. Italy first up.
Yeah.
Look, we've got to beat Italy at home. And then you're playing Ireland after Ireland would have had a very tough physical game against England. They then have to travel to Scotland. Then you've got, look, a down week, and you could be taking England on if England potentially are 0 from 2. And then you're then going, right, well, we've got Wales next up, and then like
France for the Grand Slam is what you're thinking.
Potentially.
Don't want to say.
Yeah.
Clip it right now. So I take the point on the schedule. So Italy will not be emotionally draining. There'll be no travel. Ireland will have had an emotionally draining game and a very physical game against England, and then have to travel. So if ever there's a time they should have more energy than Ireland, it's round 2.
Correct. Yeah, it's set up for them. It really is. But look, we've had Scotland's number. I think we've won the last 10 or 11 games, and with reasonable comfort. You even think of the games in Murrayfield when Ireland had multiple injuries, with, you know, Cian Healy throwing the ball into the line out, or playing hooker, Josh throwing the ball into the line out, and we still found a way. Everyone talked up Scotland for the World Cup. That was going to be a really tough game. We ultimately blew them out of the water. But they have improved significantly since then.
They have. And Ireland were really cooking back then. That was almost like the peak of mindfulness. This team have an aura, you know, the breathing in the circle. We're comfortable in chaos. That was kind of like, wow, this team under Fowler really, like...
Yeah, that night in the World Cup, that night when we played Scotland, we were on such a going night. And it was just such a shame that we didn't have that going night when we played New Zealand the following week. Because we would have beaten anyone that night. We were just, you know, when you're just on song.
So that's the Scots. Very dangerous, and the schedule lines up well. The French then, like... I didn't see this Toulouse performance against Leicester, the 80-point one that Freddie Stewart is still having nightmares about, but by all accounts, it was absolutely extraordinary. I mean, Toulouse are just phenomenal at the moment. I saw them against Ulster, and they just look kind of frightening. The forwards are the skill set's off the charts, their backline's off the charts. And then Bordeaux as well are in hot pursuit. So, you know, Stuart Barnes was writing about it, and he said they're 2 of the most complete club teams I've ever seen. So that's now the backbone of this French side. A couple of injuries in there, but the French are most people's favourites. Is Galtier, will Test Rugby allow them to replicate what we're seeing at club level?
Yes, I think it will. Okay. But I don't think people realise the gravity of the injury crisis that they have. Like, and also what Bordeaux and Toulouse are doing. You're also got international players littered in with that. And some of the opposition that they were playing against in the Champions Cup was particularly weak. You know, there the Sharks put up a reasonable contest against Toulouse, and Toulouse weren't able to impose their game in the same way against them.
Fair
But
point.
the likes of Exeter, Ulster are
Yeah. No,
poor, yeah,
Ulster had a B/C team. There's a
correct.
huge caveat with some of those performances. Remind us of the injuries then, which you think are very significant.
Yeah, so look, a fully fit backline is probably the best backline in the world. But at the moment, look, Biel Barry, who's probably the best winger or fastest winger in the world, he'd be in the top few anyway. He's concussed, so he might miss round one,
Okay.
which is a blessing for Wales. Peno has a foot or toe injury. He's probably going to miss 2 or 3 games with that.
Okay.
Dante, who's definitely their best 12 in France, and we've seen what he's done for La Rochelle
Yeah.
over the years. Fiku, who's their defensive leader, they're
Okay.
both gone for the competition. So you're going to be looking at a new center partnership, and then Burros has got a knee injury. He's their backup fullback. So Mofana, Barassi, or Deportier are going to come in. Look, they're good players, but they're not of the quality of Dante and Fiku, and they end up being a bit lightweight in the center. And then you couple that with Entimac not being the most physical of out halves, as good as he is going forward. There's definitely a bit of vulnerability, at that 10, 12, 13. And then you've got new wingers coming in. Is there going to be a bit of disconnect there? But if they can get the likes of Biel Barry and Peno back fit, and get them on the ball 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a game, they are devastating.
And they will be back for Ireland in round 4.
Correct. Yeah. Well, it looks like they will be. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Olivon in the forwards is a loss. He did his cruciate, important carrier, important line-out operator. Flamont is a calf injury. He'll be out. Looks like Antonio is going to be back fit, but he's been battling injury for La Rochelle. And then Slimani getting a call up. His last cap was the 2019 World Cup. If Antonio's not fit, it looks like he'll start, which is an incredible comeback story. And power to him.
So round it all up for us then. Are you seeing this? And this almost feels unlikely because there's always a surprise somewhere across 3 rounds of a Six Nations. But are you seeing it as likely that in round 4, Ireland and France do battle in Dublin, 3 wins apiece, effectively a Grand Slam decider, or you're seeing something different here?
I think I want to see some rugby between now and then before I start making those calls. I know you write down everything, so no. Look, round 1, I think Ireland beat England.
Yeah.
And look,
France will beat Wales in France.
France will beat Wales. Scotland will beat Italy. Round 2, Scotland Ireland is a real challenge for us.
And the French at Twickenham.
Yeah, I look forward to talking about that next week when I have a bit more footage to go through.
Does Scotland away worry you a touch more than England at home from this vantage point?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. A few
people
are saying
similar to what I thought with Northampton and Sarries for Munster. I said, look, I think we'll beat Northampton, or Munster will beat Northampton in Thomond, but I don't think you'll beat. Sorry, I think you'll beat Sarries in Thomond, but I don't think you'll beat Northampton away. Similarly, I think with Ireland, I think we beat England, but I'm not going to say we're not going to beat Scotland. I want to see how the teams play this weekend before I start hanging myself out to try.
No, sure, okay, but that is, I mean, that genuinely is the Scots' best chance that they've had in however many years. That's the one.
Absolutely.
Okay, very interesting. Very good. Any other business we haven't touched on? I don't think so.
No, that's the height of it. Look, Wales and Italy. Like, Italy were very exciting last year. They'll definitely have a scalp or two. Wales, look, the Welsh teams have had a bit of a resurgence in the URC, but they were so far off the pace in autumn. No, I don't give them a chance. Like, they're getting France at a good time. Like, typically round 1 is the time you want to get France because they get better as the competition goes on. You have 14 teams in the top 14. The cohesion isn't quite there. They've got a large injury list there. But look, they've got enough quality there to beat Wales and beat them well.
Listen, that is brilliant right the way through. We will be chatting after week 1. Monday, if you're around. Not to have a production meeting on air, but we'll chat to you on Monday.
Lock me in now.
Oh, I think, sorry, it's a bank holiday. So we might get you on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Good.
Either or.
Okay.
Anyway,
Ian Madigan, awesome. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks a lot.